Okay, so I'm going to blast through a few things today. One of the first things I want to talk about, I briefly covered this on the 9 a.m. call, but it really deserves more attention than that, is you guys should be seeing a chart on your screen that has dips and, yeah, it has dips, right?
Yes.
Okay. Residential units completed. So if you look at this, this shows you going all the way back to 2000, how homes basically, homes being built. And you can see as it started to peak in the 2008, sevens and that kind of stuff, when the market was incredibly hot right before the crash. And then we went into the housing crash. Well, what that did, we're still feeling the effects today. And you're like, well, Rob, why are we on a history lesson right now? Well, the reason why is because people are going to be asking you multiple questions. One of the questions is going to be, well, when do you think we're going to crash again? Well, all the data is showing that there's not going to be a crash again. The other one is, well, when do you think prices are going to come down? We're not seeing that in the data either. And then, well, and then prices coming down, when do you think there's going to be a crash again? And I'm going to wait and see. Okay, that's nice. You can wait and see and watch the prices go up. So what happened is back in 2008, people were doing all of these incredibly terrible loans. You were getting what was called name it and claim it loans was the nickname. So it could be like, Andrew would say, he would go into a broker and say, yeah, mortgage broker. He would say, yeah, I make 115,000 a year. Okay, great. We'll write that down. What are your expenses? My expenses are about $2,200 a month. Okay, we'll write that down. Okay, well, based on that, oh, you qualify for this loan. So we can probably loan you around $670,000. Sound good? Sounds good. Done. Name it and claim it. Well, people lied all the time. People exaggerated. And so people were getting into these homes that they couldn't afford. There was balloon loans where it did like a chart where it would go up and come down. So when you were at the low point, it's like, yeah, your payments were $1,100 a month, $1,100 a month. And then, oh, it's going to go up. Oh, yes, that's right. And people would be like, oh, that's years down the line. It's no big deal. Well, they did that in 2004, in 2005, and then it started to go up and it's like, oh, holy crap, I can't afford that. And oh no, people started pulling all the equity out of their home. So their home is worth, let's say $600,000 and they had $200,000 in it. Oh, we're going to take out $200,000. So there's no equity in the home. So basically the idea is, well, what if you lose a home? No big deal. I don't have any equity in it. So if I lose a home, I lose a home, because it's kind of a zero for me. They were doing what was called interest only loan. So when you get a loan, you hear about the percentage and you hear about when you're paying a loan off, you're paying the percentage and you're paying the principal. That's actually the amount that was borrowed. So again, if it's a $600,000 loan, that would be the principal is at $600,000 and you chunking away at it. Well, when they did interest only loans, that means that Etienne would go in and he'd say, oh, well, I want to buy this house for $600,000 and do interest only. Okay, well, the interest on your loan every month is going to be, $1,200. Okay, that's all I'll pay. So that means he's always going to be owing that $600,000. And the idea behind that was, the way they sold that was, oh, well, if you're in a home and it's worth $600,000 and it's going to go up in value because everything right now is skyrocketing in value, even though you're only paying the principal, you're only paying the interest and you still owe that $600,000. In 2 years from now, it's going to be worth $730,000. So now you have $730,000 in equity. Isn't that great? Yeah, that is great. Let me sign right here. Well, what happened is that as soon as the value went below that 600,000, all of a sudden you're upside down because, oh, wait, I still owe 600,000, but my home is now worth 570,000. well, let me just walk away from it, because why am I going to be paying more? Well, I'm going to overpay now for my house because it's no longer worth that money. You had that. You had, I forgot the exact name of it, but it was over equity, where a home was worth $600,000. But the lender was like, but you know what? Your home in 2 years is going to be worth 20% more. Well, 20% times 600 is going to be 120,000. So we're going to actually lend you $720,000 on your $600,000 home, because what's going to happen is in 2 years, that'll be even. And then after that, the equity starts building up. Isn't that great? Yeah, that's great. Oh my God, because I can buy the home and now I have $120,000 to like improve the home or do what I want to do. People did that. People also, when they pulled money out of the home, they use that same type of loan. So like I mentioned before, they would pull all the equity out. Sometimes they would pay more than the equity out. So let's say they owed, they bought a home and the home was worth $600,000. They have $200,000 in equity on the home. Well, the lender looks at that and says, guess what? We will give you, we'll give you $400,000 on your home, because that's all your equity, and we'll give you $200,000 more because you know it's going to build up in equity. Do what you want with it. And so people were like, oh my God, I'm going to remodel the house. I'm going to add on. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And they're upside down, because now their $600,000 home that only had $200,000 in it, and they took out $400,000. That means you add another $200,000 on. So now they owe $800,000 on a home that's worth $600,000. And people were like, well, let me walk away from that. And that's what happened. People couldn't afford to keep up the payments. And it was the lending industry that imploded the real estate industry. Now, not to say, so there were some realtors out there that were also taking advantage of this. So let's place blame where it should be. Most of your realtors were really on the up and up. I have a lot of good friends that were realtors throughout that time. And they would even warn them like, guys, this is not a healthy loan to have. This is not a healthy way of doing it. And I even knew some of the realtors saying, look, yes, right now, these homes are skyrocketing at this percentage, but when on everything in the average, it's about 4.8% is over the long term since 1900 is how much a home appreciates. So it'll self-correct one way or another, which, by the way, to this day, it has. In fact, it's done a little bit better. But, and that's including the big crash of 2008. So that's how we got to 2008. So that's why you have a lot of people who lived through that asking, when are we going to crash again? Because all those different things were going on. And right after this is when the whole industry was like, oh, no. And they really nailed down. Now you notice if you have a buyer, you have to qualify for them for everything. Oh, Andrew goes up and says, I make 115,000. But let's see your pay stubs. Oh, and by the way, how much do you pay in rent? Well, I paid this amount. Okay. Do you have a car payment? Yeah, let's take that into account. What other expenses do you have? I mean, everything is taken into account. So they figure out what you really can afford in the loan. You are fully vetted out. What do you have in savings? What's in your 401k? All that kind of stuff is done. Your tax records, all of that. So they make sure that if they're going to loan you 600,000, then they're going to loan you what you can afford. And so that's why we're in that kind of a industry right now, which it should be that way. It's like, can you really afford this? And if you really can, great, then this is how you do it. But when it crashed like this at the time, you had a ton of people, like my home dropped at the peak of the market. I was at one level, and when it was in the lowest point of and you never know when you're in the peak and when you're in the lowest. You can only look back and figure out where that was. But when you do the difference, mine literally was a $200,000 difference in the home value. And I was like, oh crap, I was like, oh, my home was paid off, so I wasn't sweating it as much, but still I was like, oh my God. But you look, it's like, okay, so there was such a big difference. Well, people that were thinking of buying a home, especially the younger generation, they looked at mom and dad and like they would look at me, and they would say, oh my God, you just lost so much money in your home. Why do I want to buy a home? and go through that same thing and lose all that money. I don't want to buy a home. I'm just going to rent. So you had a whole generation of people that just wanted to rent. And you had, and you did have a lot of people that lost their homes. You know, we remember the foreclosure market. There was a ton of foreclosures happening at the time. And so, and then you got what's called toxic properties at the time, where banks didn't want to touch it because, let's say the bank foreclosed on a property, they knew it wouldn't sell because nobody was buying homes at the time. And so then it just sat there. Well, then it became a toxic property because any liabilities were on the bank, and the bank didn't want to deal with that. And then there's maintenance, and there's all those little things that homeowners have to deal with that a company doesn't want to have to deal with. So you had all of that stuff going on at the time. So nobody wanted to own homes. Well, guess what too? Builders are like, why are we going to build a home? There's no money in it. Nobody's buying homes right now. So why are we constructing homes when there's even all these other homes available on the market that nobody's wanting to buy? We can build brand new homes. Nobody's going to buy those things either. In fact, some of the new developments at the time, some of this is, I know, before your time, but people would go in during the recession and literally pull out the copper piping out of the walls and then sell that copper, because that's, I mean, they would loot the place, because there was these huge developments that were just kind of abandoned, even though technically somebody owned them, either the individuals or the banks, but they would pull out, nobody was watching it, nobody was living there. And so you had that kind of stuff. And that's even why the property started becoming even more toxic, because a bank is like, holy crap, we don't want this property. We can't even, not only can we not sell it, but eventually when we do want to sell it, look at all the money we're going to have to put into it, and nobody will want it. So all that kind of stuff is taking place. So developers are like, we're out, we're done. Okay. So for a decade, we didn't have new home building that was keeping up with the population growth. So now we come into the past few years, and what's happened, people realize, oh, you know what? Home ownership is really where it's at. You know, this is really where we build up equity. This is really where we build up our family wealth. This is really where we have really good investments going on. Where if I'm paying rent to somebody, I am just building up their equity and their portfolio. So let me buy somewhere and I'll build up my own. And all of a sudden we started getting demand again. And guess what? The builders cannot in 6 months make up for a decade of not building. And they're all, I mean, permits have been just skyrocketing, where builders have been asking for permits. You know, as you know, in California, they just passed a number of things right now. In fact, something that is brand new is you're allowed to divide up your lots now. So like my lot is fairly, it's a decent size, not huge, but it's a decent size. Technically, if I wanted to divide up my lot and get rid of my garage, I can make the back part of my lot another home, build another home on it, a smaller home, and then rent it out or sell it. They're now allowing that because there's such a shortage. That's why demand is so high, because people want that. And as people have wanted it more, they've realized, oh my God, there's a scarcity. There's hardly anything out there. So that's why you're seeing such the drive. Now, that's why sometimes you have the buyer saying, well, I'm just going to wait for it to crash because it crashed before and it's going to crash again. Maybe in a few decades from now, maybe then, yes. Nothing is projected. We're looking at it, it's going to crash now. What we're looking at is still a strong buyer demand, both in the short term and the long term. Actually, I heard from Keeping Current Matters, and the reason why I like Keeping Current Matters, everything they do is based on data. They don't do it based on news outlets. They don't base it on political bias. They don't base it on anything like that. It is simply data, and you break it down and that tells you what's going on. In fact, they were actually created out of the crash of 2008 because people were scattering and everybody's trying to do, you know, the water cooler wisdom, which is not always that wise. And it was like, well, wait, what's the data showing us? And that's why, you know, Keeping Current Matters, that's how they got their name, because it's like, okay, what is really going on in the market and what's happening? And one of the things that they had said earlier last year is the projection is it may not get better to a normal average until maybe 2023 at the end. And when I mean normal, I don't mean like, oh, everything's flat. I mean, then it's just normal growth where it's about the 4.8%. So it's still a good buy. You know, you still want to buy when it's normal, but it's just supply and demand have equaled out. And supply and demand are when you hear there's what's called a seller's market and a buyer's market, and then somewhere in the middle. And I can show you a chart on that too as well. And in fact, this is one of those things I've talked about before. It's the Altos real estate website, and that link is made available to you in some of my emails and some of the ones from the office. But I want to show so you can actually see the cute little chart because it makes it easier to understand. Okay, so see where it says buyer's market and then the seller's market? Usually a balanced market, let's call that, is 5 to 7 months of inventory. And what that means is, let's say no new homes are listed, okay? 5 to 7 months from now, all the homes are sold. That's what that means. So you have 5 to 7 months of inventory on the market at the time. So, and that's how long it would take for all the inventory to go away. When you're in a buyer's market, usually the months is longer, you know, so you may have 10 months, you may have 12 months, that sort of thing, because that's how long it would take for all that inventory to be sold and dried up. Now, we are so not in that market. We are way on the seller's market. And when you look at the seller's market, that means that, let's say, in a seller's market is anywhere from around 4 months or less, then that's when it only takes that amount of time for all that inventory to be sold off. Now, also keep in mind, this is a snapshot as of today, and it shows that, oh, okay, we're looking at, it's a, it looks like it's more of a buyer's market, but you're looking at all of the zip code for 9004 and look at how many homes are there, 18. That is not a lot of homes. So it's trying to average all this out. When I pulled this up just on Friday, it was way into seller's market because there wasn't a lot of homes. So when you're looking at an inventory that this is this small, this is when you want to kind of go down and you want to look at more of what is the long term, you know, where are things at? Don't go, there's this market snapshot for the day, but then you also want to look at the long term, because if you're looking at something that is such a small area in inventory, it's a little bit more volatile, and it could seem like this, but you look at the long term and then you kind of see, because Hancock Park is definitely a seller's market right now. But that's what that means. That's what that inventory means. So that's why you're having conversations and you're probably having people ask you about this. And that's why it's really good to have charts and that kind of stuff available. And even, you know what, and then this is how you can use it when you're talking with clients. Well, you know what, I even have a chart that can show you all the inventory, and it kind of shows you through the crash and what the average should be. And would you want me to send that to you? Oh, that would be great. Well, guess what? If you don't have their contact information, you now need it, Sugar Plum, and you got it, because now you can send this to them. Either you can text it to them in their phone number, you can send it, you know, any way like that. I can even upload this in the chat right now if that would help. Let me put that in there so any of you can download that. There you go. The other thing is a quote I covered over a little bit this morning, and this is very recent. And the quote is from Showing Time, and Showing Time is the if you guys haven't been on the MLS, there's a program that's been built in for a long time called Showing Time that automatically schedules showings. So you could, Andrew could have a listing and he could say, okay, well, on this Saturday, we're going to have open house from 1 to 5, or this Saturday, we're doing appointments and here's all your time slots. And literally you can go in and book your time slots. That's what Showing Time is. Well, showings traditionally lag during the holiday season, which is true, but the data we're seeing shows us that buyer demands remain strong. I had buyers asking me, even in between the week before Christmas and New Year's, they were asking me questions. And I'm like, you never hear from buyers during that time normally. The fact that every region showed a year-over-year increase indicates that buyers are undeterred. It speaks to their desire to keep searching for their next home. And that was just this month that this was said. So we're still in a very strong market right now. And this is a projection that we're looking at. In fact, let me upload this. And why am I giving you the stuff to upload? Well, guess what? This is perfect stuff that you can put on social media. You can put it on your newsletter. You can do all that kind of stuff. This is the kind of stuff that really helps you and gives you credibility. You know, when you're, this really helped me when I was a new agent. I had a really, the agent who is a really good friend of mine and mentored me a lot. He turned me on. He relies on keeping current matters all the time. And it really helped because it was like, no, these are the facts. And so I can post the facts. So it's no longer my opinion. It's like, no, this is what the data is showing. And it allows you to have that conversation. So I was having, even though I was green, I was incredibly green, but I was able to have constructive conversations around the data that's being shown, the history, what is going on, the perspective. So that's all of what's going on there. Any questions? Wow.
I have a question, but it's like very specific. But what exactly is inventory based off of? Like, how did it determine the inventory?
That's
Like,
listings.
2 months
Those
of
are listings. Those are listings that are
amount
available.
listing?
Those are listings that are available for a given area.
Okay. And how would they know if that's like 2 months worth, 3 months worth from just amount listings?
How long they stay on the market. So like, let's say, Eric, let's say you have a listing and you sell it in a month. And then Andrew has a listing and it takes 3 months. Well, they look at that and they look 1 month, 3 month, on average, it's a 2-month inventory.
Oh, okay, so it's based off of, it's mostly based off of days on market to determine?
It's based on how long it takes for it to be taken off the market. So, and and the reason why I'm a little careful on that, because there's a difference between days on the market and cumulative days on the market. And there's a difference between the two. Days on the market means just like, hey, it's been on the market this long. Cumulative days is the entire time it's been on the market. And what some agents do, I've done this once or twice, and literally just once or twice, but agents will pull something off the market and then relist it again. They'll actually get a new listing contract signed. And what that'll do is it'll let them relist it. Now, most MLSs caught on to this, and just last year, they're now saying you have to have, it's a 1 or 2 week time between you can take something off the market and relist it again. So they kind of make it to where, you know, it's not as easy to do. But the idea behind that was, well, now I'm brand new on the market again. So, but then they show the cumulative days on the market because they know like, oh, no, this is still the same listing. So you may have days on the market are 2, but cumulative days on the market is 48. And when you're looking at most of this data, it's based on the cumulative days. How long did it really take for that place to sell? And if it took 2 months for that place to sell, that starts to lean towards 2 months of inventory. And so they take the averages of that.
Oh, okay, I see. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, is that clear now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I always wondered like, well, what is it? How do they know about inventory? You know, do they go out and count every home? That's how they, you know, that's how they do it.
What I first thought too.
Yeah, that's fine.
Since we are in the seller market, where sellers are the one now basically control the market because we are low in inventory. So as an agent, how do we really generate lead for people that really want to sell? Because I put my business card, I knock on door, I run some Facebook ads, but the response is not that much. So since the market is very hot and most houses, when I check, there's a lot of equity into the house. So the owners sometimes are very reluctant to sell their property because of the amount of money that they have accumulated as equity into their property. So what would be the best way for them to list their property for to sell? How do I really approach them?
Well, okay, let me clarify. Are you wondering how to get the lead for somebody wanting to sell? Or when you have the conversation with somebody wanting to sell, how do you help them to understand that it's a good time to sell?
Okay, because if the person wants to sell, it is easy. But if the person is not like I can go and knock on doors or run a Facebook ad. So if I knock on doors and then I can check the house, I can see that the house got so much equity into the property. But sometimes I can see that they are very reluctant. They don't want to sell their property because they have built so much money into their property. And for that reason, sometimes they don't want to sell. So how do I really convince them that they can really sell? That it's the best time for them to really sell?
Oh, you're never going to convince them.
Okay.
No. I mean, how are you going to convince them? There's no way. When people buy or sell a home, they make that decision. You know, what you do is you help them and you educate them. But nobody's going to come to my door and talk me out of, oh, you know, right, let me sell my house. That's not going to happen. And it's actually insulting when agents take that sort of approach. Oh, well, you know what? I can talk you into selling your house. Well, you're just basically calling me an a-hole that I am so stupid I don't even understand what you're doing. No, that's not going to happen. What you want to do is, and I talk about this a lot in marketing, it's when you're scratching an itch. When somebody's thinking of selling their home, and that's when you're making yourself out there and you're making yourself aware. And when they're thinking of selling their home, they have that itch. And so then you're the person that scratches it. You're the person that lets them know, hey, this is what I'm here for. This is what I'm here to help you with. Now, the average person, it used to be that the average person nationwide sold their home every 9 to 10 years. That just changed recently. Now it's every 8 to 9 years, which is significant that nationwide we actually dropped a year. At first, and I got this from Keeping Current Matters. At first I was like, well, what's the big deal? It's a year. But they were like, they showed all the data and it's like, oh, no, that's a major shift that more people are moving now because they're doing it based on their needs. They're doing because of COVID. You know, I had one sale and buy last year from the same clients for that same reason. They had a wonderful 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath home, a beautiful craftsman. I mean, it checked all the boxes until they're both attorneys working from home and they needed offices because downstairs it was all open. You know, it's that open concept. And so meaning open is, oh, guess what? Well, we can't both have meetings down here. You know, we can't be down here with the kid. It didn't work. And so they needed another home with more rooms that would let them have their own individual business going on. We've even experienced that here at my house. I'm in the living room right now. My husband, he usually takes the family room when he does his business working from home. So we're in separate parts of the house. If this house was completely open concept, we'd be driving each other crazy. And so a lot of people are moving based on that. Like, hey, what about this? Or they didn't have a backyard before, but it doesn't really matter. Well, now it's like, oh, no, I really appreciate being at home. I want to be at home more. So they want that. Or they lived in a condo. Now they want a home. They lived like in a dense area. Well, now they can work from home. Well, let's move out where there's more land. Well, let's move out where we get more yard or we get a bigger house for the money. You know, you look at a 2-bedroom, 1-bath home in, let's say, Hollywood area. And then, the reason why I'm saying this, because I know this just recently happened with a buddy of mine, he helped them do this, is they sold that home and they literally bought a 5-bedroom home out in Loma Linda area, because that's where some family member lived or whatever. But they moved, they wanted a bigger home. You know, they wanted to do that and they still had money to put in the bank. So a lot of people are going, well, why am I going to live in this area that's so congested and we can barely afford this place? Let me just move because I can still do the same work from home. So you're seeing a huge shift in people right now. And it's anybody that has a need, anybody that has, you know, hey, yes, we would like to move. But if somebody were to come up to me and say, hey, well, Rob, your home is worth this much and it's paid off. So you have all that equity in the home. Why don't you sell it? Yeah, you're right. Oh my God, I should. No, that's not going to happen. What you're going to do is you're going to keep in touch with people and you're going to build those relationships. And then once they get that itch that it's time for them to buy or sell, then if you're front of mind, then they're going to contact you. 80% of your business is going to come from people that you already know. So that's why you go out to get to know people and more people, and you build those relationships, and you use a CRM system. It could be Command, it could be something else, but you use a CRM system to kind of keep track of that and remind you, hey, keep track of these people, you know, and make sure you stay in contact with them. Because then when that comes up, you're front of mind. Because you know, what if you hit somebody and they're on year 5 of staying in their house? And we're talking averages here, but still, they're on year 5. Well, guess what? They have no itch. You know, and then what happens when, if you're in touch with them and then year 8 comes around, now they're beginning to get that itch. You know, it is time. Now the kids are older. You know, now, you know, the kids, it was cute that they grew up in the same room together, but now they want their own separate bedrooms because they're teenagers. And we're more established in our careers and we can afford a bigger house. You know, all of that kind of stuff happens. So it's when they scratch that itch, then that's when you're going to be the person that's going to be in relationship with them and contact them with them. 20% of the business comes from the Facebook ads, the door knocking, and all of a sudden somebody, you know, is available. You know, that kind of stuff. And that's if you're working it really hard. That could be 20% of your business comes from that. But 80% of your business is going to come from people you already know. I can give you an example of that. I have, I advertise on a couple of websites, and one of the websites, this gentleman contacted me. They live in Florida. They wanted to move out here because he was getting transferred out here to the credit union. And so they needed a place to buy. So he contacted me and said, hey, I got your information online. Can you help me buy a home? Sure enough, a little while later, helped him buy a home. I've been in touch with him too, ever since I sold him that home. And now what's happened is he and his spouse want to move to Newport Beach, which means they're either going to rent out the current house they're in, or most likely sell, and they're going to buy somewhere in Newport Beach. And he told me, you know, last year, hey, just want to let you know at the beginning of the year, we're probably going to be thinking about this. Okay, no problem. By the way, last week, I sent him a text and reminded him, hey, Joe, blah, 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 because I'm front of mind. I'm staying in touch with him. I'm staying in contact. But if I would have gone to him last July and said, you know what, your home is worth this much now, why don't you sell it? It's not time. It's not time. They're not making that decision at that time. So you're targeting them, or I shouldn't say you're targeting, you're keeping in contact with them for when that time comes up. Same thing on buying a home. A lot of people are thinking about buying a home, but they're not ready yet. So you're helping them get ready sometimes. Do they need to rebuild their credit score? Do they need to save up? You know, any of those sort of things. Do they need to, you know, hit up their grandparents for a gift? I'm serious, you know, that kind of stuff, helping them understand what it's going to take to help them get into a home. All of those sort of things are part of that process. Does that help?
Yes, it really helped. Thank you.
And actually that leads me into the very next thing I was going to be talking about, where I was going to talk about 2 different types of prospecting. Let me take it off of there. 2 different types. One is going to be networking and referral, and that's how I do my business. Another one is going to be hitting all the cold stuff. And I've done that, and yeah, it depends on what it is. So let me talk about what that means. First, the cold calling. And I've had a few people ask me about that. Who do you call? There's a few different lists out there that you can call. First are what we have called expireds. And expireds are, guess what? The home was listed on the market, and then the contract was, let's say, 4 months, 6 months. Normal standard contracts are 6 months. And now it expired. So now the home is off the market. And what happens is that people call the expireds because at one point, these sellers raised their hands, they had that itch, and they said, I want to sell my house. And it didn't sell. So now, realtors want to contact them to see, well, why don't we try and sell your house again? I have a few questions. What do you think is going to be on the other side of that phone call when you contact that seller?
Rejection.
Huh?
Yeah.
Rejection.
Rejection. Okay. What else?
They're probably really skeptical because it didn't work in the first place. So
Yep.
disappointment. Yeah.
Disappointment. Skeptical. Really good. What else?
I think like you said yesterday, they're going to be irritated because probably other realtors have been hitting them up about their expired listing.
Yeah, really good. Just because you got their phone number and information saying that it got expired doesn't mean you're the only one, sunshine. That means all the other realtors that are paying attention to this list also got that. So what do you think they're doing as well? They're contacting the people. Yes, that's another one. I'm going to go back to that in just a moment because I'm going to give some background on that. Another one is we are in such a seller's market right now, and their home was on the market for, let's say, 6 months and it didn't sell. What does that tell you?
The pricing is wrong.
Pricing. It could easily be way too expensive. What else?
Defects, like maybe it's sold as is.
Sorry, I didn't quite hear that, Nara.
Maybe there's like call outs like defects or they need repairs and like a buyer wouldn't want to take care of that.
Yeah, there's like, it's a huge undertaking. Yes, exactly. What else?
Not enough marketing or
Yeah. Let me work in reverse order on that. Marketing. A lot of agents, my first brokerage I was at, it was just so terrible. It was just bad. The pinnacle example I can give you is this, and this is years ago in Friendly Hills Estates. When you get there, there's different types of estates in Friendly Hills. There's some that literally are on top of the hill and they see all the way to Catalina. And actually those ones see all the way to Catalina and to Pasadena. They are literally on top of the hill. And those homes go for, at the time, they were going for like 4.6 million. Now I'm thinking easily 8 to 10. So, somebody got a listing in the office that I previously was at that. So I'm like, oh, yeah, I was like, oh, that's cool. It's Friendly Hills. They had a black and white Xeroxed flyer to sell a $4.6 million home. I looked at that and I was like, and on the cheap copy paper, I was like, seriously? You're selling a $4.6 million home and that's your marketing is some cheap black and white flyer? You got to be kidding me. It just blew me away. You know, the marketing was horrendous. Who's going to want to see that? And if you're a buyer looking at a home in that sort of genre, is that going to be representative of what you're normally used to seeing on a $4.6 million home? 8 to 10 nowadays. Like, no, not even close. So yes, marketing can be part of it. Another one, Nara, that you brought up was the idea of repairs. Yeah, what if even the home is reflecting the repairs? Let's say we were to put a home on the market and it should be worth around $800,000, but it has like foundation issues and it has these and it has all these different issues going on. And it's like, oh, there's at least $150,000 worth of repairs. So we'll reduce the price accordingly. And now we'll reduce it to 650. Well, a lot of buyers coming in may say like, I can't take that on still. That's way too much for me to take on. You know, a new roof is one thing, but all of that is another. Or you know, like what if it is foundation issues or that kind of thing? And, you know, you find out from foundation inspectors, oh, you can't be in the home while we're repairing this. Well, you have a lot of buyers like, oh, no, I need to live in whatever home we're living in while the repairs are being done. So you've excluded that amount. It could also be on that as well, where the sellers can just be difficult about that. You know, what if it's $150,000 in repairs, but they're only reducing the price by $100,000? Well, it's like, oh, okay. And in that sort of example, it usually would go to a developer, but some sellers can be really difficult to work with, and developers are even like, we're out. Sorry, you know, we're not going to take this property. So that could be another thing. In Noma, the one that you brought up is pricing. Now, the reason why I'm bringing up that last is the ones that I just brought up beforehand, that should be reflected in the pricing, but a lot of times it's not. I'll give you an example. I have a home for sale in Whittier on Scenic Drive, and it was a beautiful home, but literally it had a shingle roof, the original wood shingle roof from decades ago that really needed to be repaired. And it also had foundation issues, major foundation issues going on. So we figured out what all the repairs would be. We did pre-inspections and we got estimates for that, and then we adjusted the price. And so, because people would even come in and they were like, well, you know, it seems priced right, maybe a little bit low. And I would even tell the buyers, we are priced accordingly to what the value is to the home and what we've estimated the repairs would be. Oh, okay. You know, and we, guess what? We sold the home. But what if they don't do that? You know, what if, well, the home should be worth $860,000, but there's like $120,000 in repairs. We're still asking $860,000. Well, the price did not reflect what should be done to the home. And so therefore the home stayed on the market. So when you're calling an expired, you're looking at, oh, if it was, especially in a seller's market, if it didn't sell easily, doesn't mean it's going to sell easily again. It also means that the sellers, they've had a few experiences. One, we were told we were going to get $860,000 for the house and it didn't happen. So yeah, they're probably a little bit pissed off about that. And realtors are not their best friend at the moment. They're probably also thinking like, oh, you know what? They're going to beat me up on price. They're going to beat me up on price. And even if you're just being honest, you're having to go in and fix what the other realtor didn't do well the first time. Or the seller was such a pain in the ass that the first realtor wasn't able to overcome that. Because I also will say that, you know, sometimes it is the seller and the realtor was fine. But either way, not an easy, smooth situation to go in. Yes, they've raised their hand and they're like, I want to sell my house, but there's more to it than just, oh, they want to sell their house and they want to sell it again. Now, on top of it, like you guys already mentioned, they're getting everybody and their brother calling them at that moment. And this is the other thing I want to let you know. When you get these lists, like if you were to go to, and you can get these lists from, you could actually go on the MLS and look up the expireds and do it manually, but there's also services that do that as well. Now, when you do it on the MLS and you do it manually, yay, that's kind of part of your membership. But the services that do that, well, those don't come free, so you got to pay for that, or somebody's paying for that. When you get those, because I used to get those before, when you get those, you'll get a PDF, and the PDF will have it all broken down and simple, very much like when you see on the MLS. The name of the home, blah, 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 the owner of the home, what it was listed for, how long it was on the market, square footage, bedrooms, baths, all that kind of stuff. Okay, great. You also get what's called a CSV file. You get the Excel file that has all that broken down. Why do they give you that file? Because you can take that information, upload it to programs like Mojo, which is a program you pay for, and Mojo is an auto dialer. And so therefore, it'll auto dial all of these people. Now, why am I giving you all this information? Because my buddy, when I first started, who mentored me, when he does cold calling, that he's really good at cold calling. And you also have to be very good at rejection. But what he does is he will sit in front of his computer. He'll turn on Mojo. Mojo will dial 3 of these numbers at the same time in the expireds. And then when somebody answers, it connects to his phone and then he talks to them. So if he's doing that, there's a lot of other people doing that as well. So you're looking at people that have gotten used to, and how many times, if it's just even, I mean, just regular scams, sitting here in front of my computer this morning, I've gotten four phone calls. I have no idea who these people are. And so I let them go into voicemail. Okay. And I don't have a home that just expired. So you're looking at people that have a home and expired and they're doing the same thing. So that kind of stuff is what you're having to overcome. Some tips about that is some strategies is one, don't be the first one to call. Wait a couple of weeks and then call them, because there a lot of people are going to go through that wave of don't know him, don't know him, don't know him, don't know him, don't know him. So wait until that wave is over, then reach out and talk to them. So that means when you look up the expireds, you look for older ones, 2 to 3 weeks old. That's one way. Another way is go to the property, because when you call someone, that's a cold call. When you go to the property and you talk to the people one-on-one, it's easier to build rapport. Plus, you're communicating something to the people. You're more than just a phone call. I'm actually coming out to your home. I'm trying to build that relationship. I'm trying to build that rapport. Now, you have to have thick skin. It's an uphill battle. I'm not going to, paint it easy. You have to be okay with people saying no, people saying F off, your people, all of that kind of stuff. You have to be ready for that, because that's what you're going to get. But this is what some people do. And they do the same thing, by the way, with what's called a FSBO, for sale by owner. And you can get the same lists that are for sale by owner and try and do the same thing. But the cold calling side, that's one of those things that you can do. Many times, like let's say you go to the person's home, that's when you can say, you know what, I have a seller's guide. I have, something that can help you, or here's your latest market stats. Why don't you look them over and we can have a conversation about it in a couple of days. You're trying to build up a relationship, because the people at my old brokerage, they were trained in, I'm just going to say it. I don't care, I'm being recorded. They were trained in Mike Ferry coaching. Mike Ferry is an asshole. And yes, I said it. Everybody will tell you that. In fact, and again, I came into the industry super green, and I started hearing, because my old office they were in love with him. I mean, they were constantly like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And after a while, I'm like, this guy's kind of a jerk. So I mentioned it to a few agents and they were like, oh, everybody knows that. Everybody hates Mike Ferry. I'm like, really? Nobody likes him personally. And no, nobody does. Even his scripts, when you read his scripts, one of them is broken down. I say this example all the time. It'll say, like, if you're talking about pricing for a home, it says, well, Mr. Seller, we can price your home according to what's in fantasy land, or we can price it according to what the market is. How insulting is that? I mean, you're just being a total ass to your client. If somebody came in my home and they were sitting in my love seat right now saying that to me, I'm like, how soon can my door hit your butt on the way out? Because I'm like, I don't want to talk to you. That's who he is. Now, the reason why I'm saying all this background, because the scripts that he teaches a lot of agents is they're doing the cold calling, and they're going to go ahead and say, if somebody answers the phone, hey, I know that your home didn't sell. How would you feel if the right agent were to sell your home at the right price? Well, I know that's a script, and get off my phone. You're bugging me, along with the 4,000 other people that have just called me today. That's what it's going to be, and it's like, well, I tried. Well, yeah, like that's going to really do anything. So what I'm saying is that if you do get the other person on the phone, I would ask what we would say sometimes is some of the open-ended questions. And I'm going to share that right now. That's if you get the chance of actually talking to somebody on the phone, because, I'm not wanting to paint a rosy picture like, oh, it's going to be so easy. But if you do, or if you're able to talk with them one-on-one, you know, at the door, you're actually able to meet with them. What things were frustrating to you about the whole process? And just listen. When would you like to actually, if you were to sell your home again, when would you like to do that? And when would you like to actually move out of your home? Where would you like to go? What is your long-term goal? What is your plan? You know, and all those sort of things. And or why are you selling your home? You know, why did you originally list your home? And sometimes too, that's when you can even get the golden kernel, when they'll say like, oh, well, I wanted to see how much I can get for my home. Okay, they're going to be, even if you get the listing, they're going to be a little bit of a pain in the ass, because you know that they're going to want to price over what the market's going to be. And you're going to have to take that into account. But you ask those questions, because the Mike Ferry script, being an asshole and just saying, oh, I'm the best person, blah, 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 blah. If somebody were to say to you, oh, I'm the best person for the job, would you like to hire me? What's your immediate response internally to that? What are you thinking?
Like, why do you think so? Or like how?
Yeah, yeah, you know, how you, great, you're telling me that, but how? What else? How does it come off to you?
Overconfident.
Arrogant.
Yeah, comes off arrogant. You don't want to talk to the person. You know, you're bugging me, all of that sort of thing. And again, you're talking to these people, whether they were a pain in the butt seller or not, they've not had a good experience. And so ask questions and listen to them. You're going to have, and I've had clients that have been a pain in the butt. And so many times I'll even ask people these open-ended questions. Okay, well, what do you want? And sometimes I'll even say, well, what do you want me to do differently? I don't know. Okay. And that allows us to kind of go on instead of, you know, because this is in some situations, instead of blaming me, I'm like, well, it's because your home is way overpriced and it's a really ugly green. You know, it's like, we can have a conversation and go from there. But go ahead. And that's when you can do those. And then, like, let's say you were to get through some of these questions. Well, and you were to say, well, would you like to relist the home? And actually, that's a yes or no question. So when you relist the home, I would love to be the person to help you with that, because I can help you to market the home for the best value possible. And then you can say, you know, how does that sound to you? And by doing that, you know, you kind of like, they can't say yes or no. I mean, they could, but it's a little bit more like, well, they have to talk a little bit more. You can keep that, but it can even let you go. And like, I can give you, let me come back and I can give you a seller's information packet. And let's talk about that later. And, you know, you're going to take it. It's not going to be the beautiful scenario where Snow White opens the door and, oh no, my home didn't sell. Thank God you're here to save me. Please sell my home. Not going to be that way, sunshine. So you're going to have to be in it for the long haul. But when you're cold calling, when you're doing the expireds, that's going to be some of what it's going to require. And also it's going to be a numbers game. So it really is going to be, you're going to be going through these numbers. So you're going to be constantly, you know, doing this kind of stuff. And my buddy who, when I first started in the business, the one, you know, I mentioned Mario, really good guy, by the way. He even came to my wedding. I mean, we're really close friends. We approach real estate two totally different ways because our personalities are completely different. He will tell you that, yes, this is how he started in this business, but it got mundane, you know, and it's the same thing. And he has to just, it's a grind for him at times and so on. So no, going into it, it's going to be that way. And you may want to make this part of your business, but not the sole part of your business. Because if you can get to the point where you can have a referral and a networking type of business, it's a much smoother way of doing so, but that takes a lot more growing. You know, this is the kind of stuff, obviously, this is like a dandelion coming up in the yard. If you happen to get that dandelion seed to take root in your front yard, trust me, I know this, it'll bloom in no time. You know, it's like bingo. It's hard to get it to take, seed, but once it does, it's a pretty quick process. And then you can get, a transaction fairly quickly. But the long term, like we have jacaranda trees on my property that I have raised from seedlings and now they're huge. That's a long-term process, but it pays off in the long run because after a while, it starts to generate its own thing. And so that's a bigger build, but it takes longer to get there. And that seed takes longer to take root. So, understand that some people have, and there's different ways. And I've talked about this before, and I'll talk about it again. You can do this, you can do farming, you can do referral and network. But if you're doing cold calling, this is what it's going to take. Some other questions I always get is, where do you access the data or the phone numbers? Like I said, you can go on the MLS. There's also services. Now, our title rep, Ven, he can also possibly help you with that. So get in touch with him and he might be able to help you with some of the expireds. He also can help you with this as well. Because title companies have access to an entire neighborhood, okay? And let's say you target a neighborhood like Hancock Park. Let's shoot big. Let's shoot Hancock Park. Let's shoot Malibu. Let's shoot Santa Monica. Let's do Pacific Palisades. Sounds all good to me. Let's shoot all those properties. You could look at those properties and you could say, okay, who has lived in the house for over 30 years? Who has owned that house for over 30 years? And the title companies can pull all that information and then send it to you. That's when you can do the cold calling on those people. And again, you have to follow the guidelines of like, hey, or if they're on a do not call number, you're not supposed to call them. But they can pull that information and then you call them and you can just start that conversation, hey, or, you can send them information or any of those sort of things. That's another part of cold calling because those people may be more in that position where they're ready to move. They're ready to make that pull that trigger. For instance, think about how people are in their life. They're in their late 20s or early 30s. They've been popping out kids. Now the kids are grown. Now the kids are in college. They had a 4-bedroom or 5-bedroom house. And now it's like, well, it's just the two of them. And even when the grandkids come over, they only use one of the bedrooms. And, the other bedroom is a junk room and we don't really care about that. And it's all this extra maintenance and we don't need all this space and all that kind of stuff. And now it's been 30 years later. Well, if they were let's say they were 31 at the time, now they're 61. Well, they may be thinking of like, well, what's a good, home that's going to be a little bit smaller, or maybe it's going to be by the beach. Maybe it's going to be, instead of it's work adjacent, maybe it's more like, well, where do I want to retire adjacent? Any of those sort of things. So the people that have lived in their places for 30 years or 40 years or more, they may be in that position. That's why sometimes those people get cold called because they start that conversation. Hey, is this something that, I'm a local realtor. I just want to be a resource to you. You're building that relationship. And on the cold calling on that end, they didn't raise their hand, by the way. Think about this. Think of the client from their perspective. When you call them expired, at one point they did raise their hand. And so it's obvious why you're calling them. And even a lot of people will say, call it out. If you get a hold of them on the phone, hey, I know you've been bombarded. Obviously, your home just expired on the market. I'm sure everybody has called you. Or 2 weeks later, hey, I didn't want to be one of those realtors that bombarded you on phone call after phone call after phone call, and you're just ignoring it. I want to be a help to you. What can I do as a resource? How can I help you? Now, they may slam, but at the same time, they may be more open at that time because it's like, well, it didn't sell. Nobody really explained to me why it didn't sell. Let's talk about that. And you can start to, all those open-ended questions. You can start to have those questions. Hey, would you mind if I swing by your place? All of that sort of thing. But they raise their hand. When you're cold calling homeowners that haven't raised their hand, that's not the conversation you start with, because it's like, no, I don't want to sell my home. Click. No, I don't want to sell my home. Click. Hi, I'm Andrew. I'm a local realtor and I love your neighborhood. and I just want to be of help to anybody in the neighborhood and resource. Is there anything I can help you with? Do you need contractors? Do you need, referrals for plumbers? Do you need referrals for anything else? No, I'm fine. Okay, I completely understand. If I can ask you, what's one of the things you love about your neighborhood? Well, and if you're having that conversation, you can then develop that and so on. Again, you're cold calling, so it's not going to be easy to do. I'm saying when you get that unicorn who answers the phone, that's what you're going to do. But that's how you can also get those phone numbers, is you can contact somebody like Ben and get those people that have been in their home for that amount of time. Okay, we're a few minutes over, and I'll hit referrals next time, referral sort of thing. Any questions on that kind of stuff? Ooh, it's quiet.
I have a question, but not particularly on that. But since the pandemic in LA especially is getting really bad, are people still open to door knocking, or are they more closed because of that?
It's going to depend on the demographic. And Eric, that is actually a good question. It depends on, and I live in Whittier, and literally Whittier borderline, well, Whittier's huge. It's like Long Beach. It's a big city, but it also borderlines, well, just like Long Beach, Orange County. And so Orange County, as you guys have known, has had different sort of guidelines than LA County. And for a while, it almost seemed a little ridiculous, where across the street, they could go ahead and have restaurants open, but on this side of the street, restaurants had to stay closed. So it was like, that seems a little weird, but they have to divide it somewhere. The reason why I'm saying that is because the attitudes, the closer you get to certain areas, are a little bit more laxed as opposed to other sides. So if I was in the Miracle Mile area right now, I would keep my cold calling my door knocking a little light. And if I did door knock, I would knock on the door, but I would be really far away, not like to the sidewalk, but just respectful of the area. And even calling, it never hurts to call out the elephant in the room. Hey, I just wanted to come by if there's any way, a resource. Obviously, I want to respect space here. That's the reason why I'm standing here. Is there anything I can do to help, or anything in the neighborhood, that I should be aware of as a realtor? Then you can do that for door knocking. On my side of town, probably I would just be a few steps back and it wouldn't matter as much. Now you're going to find exceptions all over the place, but it just depends on the attitudes of the area. And a lot of times the attitudes tend to be a little bit demographic. In a sense, it's a little bit of an advantage that I live on one side of town, but my office is on the other side of town, because whether it's this or whether it's how open houses are held or other things, I kind of see two different things going on. But I would, I would say first and foremost, always be respectful. If there's a way in which you can be respectful, do it and call it out. It never hurts to call it out. Some people don't understand, oh, you're trying to be respectful. So it never hurts when, you door knock, you hit the, the Amazon Ring doorbell, and they come to the door. Hey, just want to let you know, by the way, I want to respect space here and want to make sure that you feel, comfortable. But I'm just walking through the neighborhood. I love this neighborhood and I want to get to know more about it. I'm a local realtor. What things do you love about this neighborhood? And then you can try and have that conversation door knocking. Does that help?
Yeah. So is that the general attitude of like the central LA area? Like, since Miracle Mile is also there?
It just depends.
Or-
It depends on the area. The more you go to the west side, tends to be the more that, they're going to be a little bit more apprehensive. In my experience, when I've talked to other people, and the more you come to the east side towards Orange County, Inland Empire, they're going to be a little bit more laxed. But again, being respectful and even calling it out. I would do that now. If I were to door knock in my neighborhood, I wouldn't be right on the door. And some people, even if it wasn't with COVID, they feel intimidated. I would back off a little bit and, you know, and just have a conversation, but especially with COVID now, then I would just call it out. And I'd say, hey, I'm just a local realtor. I want to respect the space and so on. I want to make sure you feel comfortable, and then just go from there.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Well, I've gone through a lot of coffee and a lot of talking, and thanks for your attention and input. And I will see you guys next week. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.